Pahlavi texts, translated by E.W. West. Part 2, the Dadastani Dinik and the Epistles of Manuskihar, Clarendon, Oxford University Press, 1882. The Epistles of Manuskihar. It has been already stated. See page 13 and 14. Well, we're on 13 and 14. Maybe they're including, okay, that's 10, 12 pages of, like, contents and stuff. That Zoroastrianism, a younger brother of Manuskihar, after having been at Sarax in the extreme northeast of Khorasan, where he seems to have been associated with the heretical Tugazgus, was appointed high priest of Sirkan, south or southwest of Kerman. Shortly after his arrival there, he issued a decree regarding the ceremonies of purification and other matters, which was so unpalatable to the Mazda worshippers of that place that they wrote an epistle to Manuskihar complaining of the conduct of his brother. Epistle 112 and 2:1. In reply to this complaint, which was sent by a special courier, Epistle 112, and after going to Shiraz and holding a general assembly of the priests and elders, Epistle 2:12, Manuskihar wrote his first epistle, completed on the 15th of March, 1881, Epistle 1:11-12, in which he condemned the practices decreed by Zoroastrianism, to whom he sent a confidential agent named Yazdan Panak, Epistle 1:11-1-6-10-2-7-2, with a copy of this epistle and a further one to himself, which has not been preserved, for the purpose of inducing his brother to withdraw his decree and conform to the usual customs. It would appear that Yazdan Panak was not very successful in his mission, as we find Manuskihar in writing a general epistle, Epistle 3, to all Mazda worshippers in Iran in the following June or July, Epistle 3:21, denouncing as heretical the mode of purification decreed by Zoroastrianism and ordering an immediate return to former customs. At the same time, Epistle 2:7-2 and 8:1, he wrote a second epistle, Epistle 2, to his brother, as he had already promised in Epistle 1:11-2, and after referring to an epistle now lost which he had received from Zoroastrianism in the previous November or December, he proceeded to enforce his views by a judicious intermingling of argument, entreaty, and threats. He also contemplated making preparations, Epistle 1:11-4, 2:7-3, for traveling himself to Sirkan, notwithstanding his age, Epistle 2:9-1, to arrange the matters in dispute upon satisfactory basis. Whether he actually undertook this journey is unknown, but that his brother must have finally submitted to his authority appears from Zoroastrianism retaining his position in the south, as has already been noticed. Page 14. Well, I mean, we're in Roman numerals, but there is no Fort XIV. The matter in dispute between Zoroastrianism and the Orthodox Mazda worshippers may seem a trivial one to people of other religions, but inasmuch as the ceremonial uncleanness of a person insufficiently purified after contact with the dead would contaminate every one he associated with, the sufficiency of the mode of purification was quite as important to the community, both priests and laity, as avoidance of breach of castrals is to the Hindu, or refraining from sacrifices to heathen gods. Well, heathen and pagan isn't really a thing, but I mean, you can worship saints, but you can't worship other things that's not on the official list, was to the Jew, the early Christian, or the Muslim. Well, the Muslim and most of the Jews, you only worship God. You don't worship a second. There's no female. There's no male. Whatever. And much more important than any disputes about sacraments, infallibility, apostolic succession, ritual, or observance of the Sabbath can possibly be to any modern Romanist or Protestant. In his mode of dealing with this matter, Manuskihar displays at once the moderation and tact of a statesman accustomed to responsibility, the learning and zeal of a well-informed priest, and the kindly affection of a brother. That he was not without rivals and enemies appears from his casual allusions to Zarathustra, the club-footed, and Aturopod in Epistle 2, 1:13, 5:14, 9:11, but in all such allusions, as well as in his denunciation of heretical opinions, he refrains from coarse invective and avoids the use of exaggerated language, such as too often disfigures and weakens the arguments in polemical discussions. Indirectly, these epistles throw some light upon the condition of the Mazda worshippers after more than 2 centuries of ceaseless struggle with the ever-advancing flood of Islam, which was destined to submerge them. Shiraz, Sirkan, Kirman, Ra'i, and Sarax are still mentioned as headquarters of the old faith, and we are told of assemblies at Shiraz and among the Tugazgus, the former of which appears to have been the chief control of religious matters in Pars, Kirman, and the south, acting as counsel to the high priest of Pars and Kirman, who was recognized as the leader of religion, Dadastani Dinik, 45:5. And we remember that Islam forbade the killing of non-combatants and the protection of the spiritual oratory places and all that. And is there any mention of any of the major sacred fires being put out by the Muslims? Armies or something? No, they generally, they left them. There was issues going on with some of the priesthoods, and that was addressed as much as anything. There was some people that made violations, but it wasn't the religion that they did this for. But anyways, we learn from Epistle 1:3. It says IX, or is that supposed to be 40? No, I guess that's supposed to be, okay, 1:3, 1:10, 2:5, 14, that the leaders of the Mazda worshippers, if not their high priests, were still in the habit of maintaining troops, and from Epistle 2, 1:9, that when a high priest became very old, his worldly duties were performed by 4 of the most learned priests, forming a committee which had full authority to deliberate and act for him in all worldly matters. Manuskihar even speaks of emigrating by sea to China or by land to Asia Minor, Epistle 2:8-5, in order to escape from the annoyances of his position. But the statements which are most important to the Pahlavi scholar in these epistles are the date attached to the 3rd epistle corresponding to 881 of the Common Era, and the mention of Nishappuhar in Epistle 1, 4, 15, and 17 as the supreme officiating priest and counselor of King Khusro Noshirvan, 531 to 579 of the Common Era, engaged apparently in writing commentaries on the Avesta. The date of these epistles not only limits that of the Dadastani Dinik to the latter half of the 9th century, but also fixes those of the larger recension of the Bundahis and of the latest revision of the Dean card within the same period, because it is stated in Bundahis 33, 10, and 11 that the writer of that chapter was a contemporary of Zadsparam, son of Eudanyim, and Aturpad, son of Hamid, the former of whom was evidently the brother of Manuskihar, and the latter is mentioned in Dean card 3, 413 as the latest editor of that work. The actual compiler of a great part of the Dean card, especially of the 4th and fifth books was, however, somewhat earlier writer Eterfrobog, son of Farokuzad, Dadastani Danik, 88.8, Epistle 139. The name of Nishapuhar is also mentioned as that of a commentator in the Pahlavi Vendadad and Nirangastan, which works must therefore have been revised since the middle of the 6th century, and as we are informed in the book of Arda Viraf 135, that there are some who call him by the name of Nikshapur, we ought probably to refer that book to the same age. These epistles therefore enable us for the first time to fix the probable dates of the latest extensive revisions of 6 of the most important Pahlavi works that are still extant, and from the relationship of these to others we can readily arrive at safer conclusions regarding the age of Pahlavi literature in general than have been hitherto possible.